welcome to Night Shadows. I'm Stewart Best, where the paranormal is normal, where that which you thought you knew, you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and I made our thing a little bit vague because people are being shot down on broadcasting anything to do, evidently, with the Middle East. I was watching Fox News for just a little while, see if anything come across the ticker. They're not talking about it. Here we have a major war going on that's going to eventually make a collision between the United States and Russia. It doesn't look good. Hi, Larry. How you doing?
Hey, Stewart. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, what's your latest on this whole thing? This doesn't sound good to me at all.
No, it doesn't. And as a matter of fact, I get people that jump at me because I post something by Hal Turner or post something by Sartre Fall. Except the trouble is, when you wait a week or so, what they said was true. So anyway. Something that's interesting, though, Sartre Fall has been warning about, of course, is Russia's concerned that they're going to try to take down Trump. Now, I don't know if you saw it, but one of the headlines today was Steve Bannon warns the American people the U.S. President Donald Trump is facing a coup. Bannon says this is serious. This is a coup in America. This is a crisis, people. Of course, no one listens to Steve Bannon, but he just happens to be accurate.
Yeah, I mean, we're in the middle. Well, we're at the apex, I think, of a communist coup, and of course, communists like Muslims can lie about anything as long as it advances their faith, and in this particular case, as long as it advances the agenda that they have mapped out to take the United States down. What bothers me is the timeline for this war over in the Middle East. It appears. Here's something. Battle for Idlib begins as Syrian Russian forces unleash a massive attack. That was back in 2008, September. Well, we're on the 9th now. But this is continuing, as I understand it. Is that correct?
Well, that is correct.
What's the latest?
What's interesting, what's the latest is really shocking because, number one, there are reports that the U.S. Marines at Al-Tanq in Syria have now begun to fire artillery in the direction of the Russian and Syrian forces as the Turks begin to arrive in Idlib. Now, this is what's interesting, Stewart. There was a Q alert, and I checked it out. It seems to jive that massive Turkish tank and armor convoys, 300-plus vehicles, are including battle tanks, MLR launcher units, and BMPs, have now entered Idlib to defend the rebels against Russian and Syrian forces. Now, at the same time, we've also reinforced our Marines at Tif, but at the same time also the Syrians and the Iranians are massing forces to attack Idlib from different directions at the same time. Now, what's interesting, Stewart, and I'd like your opinion here, is the fact that one of the leaders killed in Idlib was assassinated, I think, last night, and he's ISIS. He's ISIL. What are we doing trying to protect ISIL and ISIS terrorists, and what is Erdogan doing trying to save them?
Good question. I think what Turkey's doing is they kind of come in under that guise, but it wouldn't surprise me one bit if it's a double cross, and they join in with the Russians and Iran. They're fighting basically to extinguish the last of this ISIS, ISIL, whatever you want to call these terrorist rebels. This is the last stand. And they've got to get rid of them. They've said they wanted to get rid of them. Assad wants to get rid of them. So you got Syria. You've got Iran. We've got the agreements that were just made with Iran. You've got now Turkey coming in, it says, to defend. But then Turkey this is kind of interesting because Turkey has been kind of sitting on both sides of the fence. And, of course, we've got Putin, who's already warned, do not, the United States especially, do not come in here and stir trouble up, or you're going to get more trouble than you know what to do with. And at this stage, because of where we are in the timeline and how we are coming up on 9/11, I'm very, very suspicious. I was suspicious before because all of this seemed to take place after high-level meetings with certain leaders. And now all of a sudden here we have a war. And it just looks more and more like it's orchestrated. I don't know. What do you think? I just think it is.
Well, Stewart, I'm very concerned because of the fact that Turkey is a NATO member. What if Turkey's army inside Idlib gets attacked by Russian and Syria and Iranian troops? Is that an attack on NATO? What do you think?
Yeah, it would be. And this may be exactly what they're trying to do, too. We don't know exactly how they've mapped this out, but obviously the dominoes are beginning to fall. And here we got this article. Russia has warned the U.S. military twice in the last week that its forces, along with Syrian regime units, are prepared to attack in an area where dozens of U.S. troops are now located, according to several U.S. defense officials. Russia claims that there are militants in the area protected by U.S. troops, and Moscow's declaration has sharply raised U.S. commanders' concerns that the American forces would be at risk if a Russian attack goes forward, and it has sparked U.S. warnings to Moscow not to challenge the U.S. military presence. Well, why shouldn't they? We're totally illegal there. We have no business in there at all. And Russia does. And so this is kind of like the dominoes all set up and ready to go, boom, boom, boom. And we're in World War III before we even knew it. And there's something coming down the pike, Larry. There's too many timelines, too many things that all converge on Tuesday. And that's 9/11. If they see the new moon. Have you had any reports on the new moon yet?
Have not yet. Of course, Israel began celebrating Rosh Hashanah, I think tonight.
Yes.
And so, but I haven't heard. But also what's interesting in this, there are reports now that the Russians have formed a ring around Syria pretty much, whether it's in the Mediterranean or on land or whatever, they pretty well control that area. And there are some scattered reports that they've been landing troops from some of those ships at Tartus. We do know that it appears Israel is still flying missions into Syria, certain areas of Syria, and hitting the Syrians and the Iranians. This whole thing is like a quagmire. It's just one giant, if you will, military quicksand.
Yeah. Any mistake anywhere, and boom, this thing can go sky high. And of course, we're right on time for it. If you take 411 as being a 911 emergency, which is an emergency call, there you go. I mean, we're heading into something that, and not necessarily the rapture may take place, although there's an awful lot of timelines that if the pre-tribulational or tribulational rapture position is right, the bride should be going. If it's not, well, we may be around for a little while. We're going to see some stuff, serious stuff, and it will spill over. If this thing once gets escalated, we'll be under martial law very soon. And it's just a heads up for everybody. What's the latest on Florence?
Well, the latest seems to be, from all I can tell of the projections, that this hurricane, which it is a Hurricane Florence, by the way, and rapidly building, and they expect it to build from to a 3 and then go to a 4 and then possibly a 5, but they are talking now about a strike on the east coast of the U.S., beginning just above Florida, possibly.
Wow.
They're not sure that some have shown it going off to the north, but almost all weather strategists that I've seen, and even the European model, is predicting a landfall in the U.S. So it's going to be a big one, it appears, unless something changes. Matter of fact, I was going to mention Sam, who is a very young boy, belongs to Ian Taylor, the pastor in the Philippines, was woken one night and shared information by an angel about a hurricane that was coming, and Sam asked him if it was going to hit the Philippines because that's where they are, and the angel said no, the east coast of the United States. So that's just a clue.
Yeah, and this thing, if it reaches a 5, I mean, America has snubbed the Lord and given the finger to the Lord in so many ways, in so many different areas. And like I said in my blog, there is a time when the Lord's going to say, okay, I've had enough. This is it. And when that happens, like it did in ancient Babylon, you know, the writing on the wall, bang, that very night, that was the end of it. And there is an omega point, folks, and we may very well be coming up on that omega point. Very, very rough times are coming. You got a headline here from Hal Turner. U.S. Marines stationed in Syria are firing air and artillery shots. I know you mentioned it. Where Russian forces, if they start killing Russian people, that we're going to be in trouble.
Well, that's what I was saying. There's so many units of the different militaries there. That's a small area with all of them in it. And when you begin to fire these artillery rounds and drop bombs and fire missiles, and by the way, Iran is also firing missiles into Iraq, you know. So
wow.
This thing is ramping. And what concerns me, Stewart, and I'd like your opinion here, it appears that Trump, since he got into office, has tried to delay or put off or stop this insanity of war that the deep state has declared it's going to do, led by its, if you will, globalists. And my concern is I don't know if he's got enough chutzpah to be able to stop them. Pat Buchanan just warned that they're after Trump now, and they're not going to let up. And Pat Buchanan said this is a coup, and they're not going to back off.
I don't think they will either. They've got to get rid of Trump right now, no matter how they do it, and they need their war. Iran needs its war for their 12th hymen. Obama's sitting there in the wings just waiting, and everybody thinks that Obama cannot come back. I wouldn't be so sure. I don't know who Antichrist really is, but I'll tell you one thing. Obama has a lot more power than people realize, and he's doing a lot of things behind the scenes, and he doesn't seem to be being stopped by anyone. And I keep hearing, well, they're going to arrest all these people. I haven't seen one of them arrested yet. All I see is Republicans arrested. So there's something really going on here that's deeper than we all know. And anyway, we'll try and get back to you, and if there's an emergency, we'll do it tomorrow or whenever. But keep your eyes on the Middle East. If you can glean anything, you probably have to go overseas and go to I understand YouTube has knocked off all of this news that's coming out of the Middle East, Larry. Is that right?
Yeah, a lot of the Middle East news and coming out of Syria to the Internet through YouTube has been shut off, and a lot of people are having problems. Hal Turner's even having problems getting information out now. They're putting a blackout over this area, and I'm telling people, I can't even get stuff posted about it on Yahoo Group lately. They are really shutting down the information coming out, and American media, forget it.
Yeah, this whole thing that is going dark is extremely serious, folks. Heads up, and thank you for all listening, and thank you, Larry, for coming on, and we'll bring the latest news as soon as we can. All right. Good night, everyone. Night, Larry. Take care.
Night.